Hello, welcome to the March 17th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo, and I'll be the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can submit questions in the live chat field, or you could send a question via email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could indicate which level of Cubase you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg software, which version number, so if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system you're using, that information will be helpful. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in kind of a real-time manner soon get eclipsed. I'll try my best throughout the live stream to keep up. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could refrain from asking the same question over and over again, that just kind of slows down the whole process, that would be appreciated. We should have an index of all the topics covered with timestamps pinned to the top of the comments field. So we should have that several hours after the live stream ends. I'll take a dinner break and then go back and rewatch the live stream and type up all the questions with timestamps. And if you wanted to search for different topics, you could go to Club Cubase, or you could go to cubaseindex.com. And just cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to actually create that website. So you could search, I think it's over 25,000 topics that we've covered in the last 3 years. So we want to give special thanks to Jan for his efforts in compiling and creating that website. It's so useful for so many people. We also have two people that serve as moderators. We have Jazz Dude and Agent K. We want to give special thanks to them because neither of them are Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better community. One other resource that we have available, we should give special thanks to Jazz Dude for, is the Cubase Nation Discord. So it's a wonderful resource of information that's really relevant for the Steinberg community, with lots of tutorials and files. And so definitely worth investigating and checking out. So we want to give special thanks for all of his efforts with that. We will be doing a giveaway for two different software titles today. We'll do kind of what we've done in the past, kind of a live stream trivia. So we'll give it a little bit of time, maybe halfway through, because I know we're still having different time changes in case people are missing. So, but we'll try to do that in about 2 hours. So this is our third 3-year anniversary since COVID started of the live streams. And I have a couple of statistics that you may find interesting. Let me just get my document up to share with you. So in the 3 years, the first one is March 17th, 2020. So we've created 289 live streams. It is 1,744 hours of content. We've answered and discussed 25,129 questions and topics. We have 3,133,909 views, and of those views, it's 1,814,232 hours have been watched. So I want to give a special thanks to everyone that has made the live stream such a success, and it's just a joy to be able to help people, and I think it's such a wonderful, friendly community. And I want to give a special thanks to everyone that attends and asks questions. And I hope that people enjoy the live streams, and we'll go ahead and get started with some of our questions. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so we see Peter from Montreal wishing everyone a happy Friday. All right, so we see a question from Dave. Is there a way to make tap tempo a shortcut key? Example, tap the tempo by pressing a key or a key combination. So really what you could do is, let's say I just want to take this particular file. So it is a keyboard shortcut. So if we go to Edit, and let's go to Key Commands, And we will come over, and I think if we go to MIDI, there is a merge tempo from tapping function. So how it kind of works, if you're not familiar with it, is we could just kind of hit record. So as I hit record on a particular track, and I'm just going to hit my controller keyboard, say I'm just tapping along. Okay, so if I wanted to do that, what I could do now is I could go to my merge tempo from tapping function. So we go to MIDI to functions. We could assign a keyboard shortcut to that, and I've assigned it as a function in my MIDI remote. So if I wanted to go to my MIDI remote, I think I have it assigned to this particular function. So once and you would find it and you could just do a search on the merge tempo from tapping, and then you could see that's going to show up under MIDI. So how this function works is you could just come right over here and we will select the particular event. Then I'm going to hit my keyboard shortcut, and then we can say, okay, I wanted this to be quarter notes. We'll say okay, and then you could just do kind of tap tempo, and that could create a tempo map for you. So it doesn't necessarily open up a special window. You just take any MIDI recording and then automatically just apply the tap tempo, and you can do that via MIDI keyboard shortcut, and that will create the tempo map for you. All right, so we see a feature request from DDP Music. Says he's warming up with this feature request / wish list to direct offline processing window in the lower zone. So I'll make sure to pass that along. So that would make sense. So, all right. So we have Kamad Beats. Welcome to the live stream. Hi, Greg, and all Cubasers. How to automate anything. So really all you need to do to automate particular tracks is, let's say I wanted to take this vocal. So we would just click on the W button, and then, if we open up our channel settings, so even if we go to our fader here, so once we click on the W button, that's write automation, and R is for read. So now as soon as I come over here, I can just, as I move the fader, I started losing my place. So now as we rewind everything that I just did, and I think this will do kind of a fade out or fade in. And if I wanted to automate other parameters kind of on top of that, we could just, let's say if I want to get to the channel settings at this point. So let's say, okay, I just want to come here to my sends. I'm going to automate. So we have a dry. I started losing my place. So any parameter that I want to kind of touch. What dimension am I in? So as soon as we go back, all my EQ changes, my panning, my sends. I started losing my place. And then we see the EQ come in. What dimension am I in? So just click on the W button on a channel, and then whatever you kind of move on a particular channel, then you could automate it just that easily. All right, so we have Thermonuclear War checking in from Serbia. Thanks for joining us. All right, so see from Kevin Medmed just asking when we could do a video chat. So I might be free on Wednesday of next week. I have Monday off. And Tuesday I'll be doing a live stream. But maybe Wednesday, Kevin, if you want to reach out. See kind words from Jazz Dude and Benny from Sweden on the 3-year anniversary. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your guys' efforts. And thank you, Soren, as well, for your kind words. Also wishing 3 years. All right, so we see from Parabot2 says, I cannot find a clubhouse at Steinberg to ask a question. So all you have to do is really just ask your question, just type it in. So just type it in the chat field just like you did. All right, we see Jan wishing a 3-year happy anniversary. All right, and Pablo is on today. So Pablo is on early. So it's so wonderful to see you and glad that you could make the live stream. All right, so we have a question from Mike Weiser. Is there a way to Q-Link and move the pre-post fader line up and down in the inserts menu across all tracks at once? So I'm not sure if there is, but let's go ahead and take a quick look just to make sure. I think that's kind of on a track-by-track basis, but let's see if we could do it. Okay, so let me just come over here to mix console and say, okay, I have these tracks, and we'll go to our insert view. So I think it's intended to kind of, all right, just make sure that we have these tracks in Q-Link. I'll take the selected tracks. Yeah, so I think it's going to be kind of individual for that because there may be kind of different insert effects. So I don't know a way to do that. So I think it has to be kind of done one track at a time for determining the pre and post fader inserts. But I'll pass that along as a feature suggestion. All right, so we see Michael Pierce joining us. He's going to have to be dipping in and out. He's wishing happy 3rd anniversary. Thank you so much. And John Costigan has a great comment. Says, thanking Jazz Dude for his 3 years of assistance. So it makes my job so much easier. So thank you, Jazz Dude. All right, we see Pablo is protected with Cubase. All right. Okay, so we see from Kevin Mehmed, I'm using Hallian 7 full version. How do you set up the audio connections folder? So, if I'm not sure, Kevin, if you're running it as a plugin, but if you're just doing it, as a VST instrument. So let's say we come over here, we drop in a Hallian 7 instance, once we do this, you could set up, any output routing. So as soon as we add the particular instrument in, that we can just come over and the routing would automatically be added into the file. And let's see if we were running it standalone. Let me see if I had the standalone version installed. So I'm not sure when you say audio folders. Haven't run a standalone version yet, so most people would obviously run it as a plugin inside of Cubase. But let's say if we're here, let's go to maybe our setup window, and then we'll say, okay, let's get to our audio outputs, and then we could choose We go to your ASIO driver, you could set your ASIO driver there, and then when you go to your outputs, you could just simply, at this point, set it up for all the outputs, and you could also have audio input ports, so if you wanted to do sampling right there. So let me know if you're running in standalone or as a plugin, Kevin. So we see from Daniel, I don't have any money right now. Will there be another discount for Cubase like there is now? So I wouldn't anticipate one for a while. So, if you have any chance of, getting it now is a good time to save to 40%. So maybe you can borrow money or put on a credit card, but that seems so American. But, if you wanted to save money, it's a great time to jump into it to take advantage because there's currently the Cubase 40% off promotion that's currently going on. All right, so we see Kuz says thank you, saying hello to everyone and thanking for the streams. You're welcome. Thanks for being on. All right, so we see question. Will there be more softwares other than Halion 7 added to Absolute 6? So I think that between Absolute 5 and Absolute 6, the big difference was Halion, but it also included FM Lab and Tails. But you could get that, but those do come with Halion 7, so that was the thing, and all of them are also now on the Steinberg licensing as well. So, but I don't think that they will be maybe adding other new titles with that. So you get a lot of great new functionality directly with Halion 7. All right, wonderful to see Nick and glad that he's feeling better. It's great to hear. All right, and Filter Freaks wishing a happy 3rd anniversary. All right, so we see new features in Halion 7. Please for different things you can do for the PC. So some of the things that are going to be new in Halion 7, there's going to be a lot of kind of under the hood stuff that's going to happen. Also, we see that it's going to be on a Mac platform. It's going to be Apple Silicon native. It doesn't require the USB e-licenser. It's not on the e-licenser anymore. There's going to be lots of kind of overall user interface enhancements. So you have kind of a new media bay that's synced with Cubase. So if you give a rating in Cubase to a preset, it's automatically synchronized with the media bay directly inside of Halion. There's going to be a new kind of spectral oscillator. There's lots of stuff if you're creating your own instruments. And probably the biggest thing, if you had to give like one takeaway, is the ability of just having the FM Lab. So if you wanted to have, typical kind of FM synthesis, where we could have control over your, various, you have 8 ops. So you could just come over here and really do like just, tremendous amount of synthesis capabilities all kind of right here. So you could take a look at all of your different operators and what each of them are doing as well. So, and it will also read any like TX81Z or DX7 sysx files. So you could take all of your patches directly from those, but just kind of wonderful. So like really just amazing sounds. And this is kind of a joint technology of Steinberg and Yamaha to bring this to you. And Yamaha is obviously the most prolific with FM synthesis. So. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to make loop backwards? Control D is duplicate forward. Is there a command for looping backward from cursor? Okay, so I guess you want to take a particular loop. Let me just say if we have this here. So, I mean, just other than kind of doing it manually, so usually when we duplicate, it's going to go forward, but we could, just manually move it backwards, but there's no, usually most of the time it's going to, people tend to duplicate kind of going like on in time, but I don't know of a function that would do this in kind of the opposite mode to kind of go back. So I guess if you had to, you could just kind of drag that back and drag it out if needed. But nothing I know of to like a reverse duplicate, but I'll include it in my notes to pass along to Steinberg. See, PZ136 says he came across their first one during lockdown when he was stuck in Amsterdam. Been here ever since. Thanks for a great resource. Never beaten. Thank you so much. All right, wonderful to see Jeweler to Rocket on. Pablo has forgotten his Cubase questions, right? Well, all right, wonderful to see my friend Clay Oswald on. This 3 years of incredible support and endless information. Congrats, Greg. So people could Google Clay. He's an amazingly talented individual, and he's going to be moving to Washington, D.C. area. Looking forward to being able to see him more. Great to see you on, Clay. All right, Benny wants to get up to 200 likes today if everyone smashes the like button. All right. All right, so we have Eric checking in from Palm Springs. Thanks for being on. And Pablo wants to know who brought the cake. Maybe Michael Teams could do cake and ice cream today for our 3-year anniversary. All right, so we have Chak the Alchemist saying hi from Rome. All right, so we have OEW saying best DAW support on the planet. Thanks for all your knowledge over the last years, Greg. I've always sat in the background. Well, thanks for coming out and saying hi, and I appreciate the comments. It's very kind. Eric's been running Cubase since Atari, so it's great. All right, Captainergy Music from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is happy to be here for the 3-year celebration. All right. Wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream. All right, so we have a question. Is it possible to have different BPM in a single track in Cubase Pro? So you could have tracks that respond to to tempo and tracks that don't respond to tempo. So let's say if I just want to take a particular track, let's say I'm just going to have a loop, and I'll just jump back. All right, so let's say I have this and I have this loop in musical mode so that it's going to sync with the project tempo. All right, so let's say we want that, but now I want a different loop here. So, any audio that's recorded, if you don't put it into musical mode, will kind of play back at its original tempo. So let's say I'm listening to this. So this is in musical mode. This is not in musical mode, and these tracks are. So I turn on my click track. So now if I change the tempo, this would still play back at the original tempo. So let's say, okay, I want to go down to 80 beats a minute. So now like these are still playing at 80 beats a minute. So now that this is on the same track, so that way you could have audio material at different tempos on the same track. So depending on if you put different events in musical mode and others not in musical mode, you could have different BPMs on a similar track. All right, so we have Scott Harema just saying happy 3 years from Denver. Thank you so much. Doug goes wishing a happy Friday to everyone. All right, so Parabot2 asks, what's the easiest way to put a flanger across all tracks at once? Okay, so you could probably just put a flanger on the master bus. So let's come over here. So let's say, do this. So let's say as we're playing this, so I'll go to my master fader here. And at this point, we'll just say, okay, let's go to modulation. And then if you wanted to just only have that in particular sections, you could automate and say as we go up to the next part, I just want to bring my flanger in. So now we come over here. We'll see the flanger just be automated and kind of go in to the whole project and then go out roughly in time musically for the downbeat. So just go to like your master fader and then you could just drop kind of a flanger as your insert, just like that. So let me know if that is helpful for you. All right, so see Jack B says congratulations. Thank you so much. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin on from Montana. Okay, so we have a question from EVSD. Hey, I wanted to ask you how you stream the sound of Cubase. So what I do is I use a program, OBS, for the broadcasting. I have one audio interface that Cubase utilizes. So my Cubase is using my Steinberg UR24C audio interface, and it's fed. The audio out of that is fed into a mixer, a Yamaha mixer, and my microphone is fed into that mixer. And the that mixer, the Yamaha mixer, it's an MW12CWX or something, MW12CX, is connected to the computer via USB. And when I go into OBS, I use my Yamaha mixer for the streaming. So I have one audio interface for Cubase, and then the audio of that just goes analog out to the mixer, where it's combined with my microphone. So if I need a cough or my son knocks on the door, I could hit a mute button easily. So that's kind of my setup for the streaming, and I found it works really well. I can change sample rates, and I don't have to worry about other things. So we see, Greg, is there a way to map knobs on my Launch Key 61 to track channel send parameter? So yeah, we could do that. So if you're in Cubase 12, we have a thing called the MIDI remote. So I'm going to come over here. Let's say I have like a device that has 8 faders. And I wanted this to control maybe the sends on the selected track. So what I'm going to do is just double click, and we'll go into a mapping assistant. So once you have kind of your knobs configured in the MIDI remote, and it's really easy to do that, I could just go to selected track, and let's say we want to go to send slots, and I want send 1 level. So I'm going to move this fader. And now we've assigned send 1 level. I want to go to fader 2 and move that so that selects the fader. Double click. Let's close that. Let's go to slot 3. I touched the fader box. Slot 4. So if I say slot 4, we'll get to level. Slot 5, and you could just double click. All right, so now when I open up a track here, so let's go to my sends, and let me just activate some different effect sends. All right, so now when I'm on a selected track, I'll just go ahead and duplicate this track. So now that we've done that for the selected track, so now when I'm on my selected track, I can now just adjust, and I go to this track, and let's say it has the same effect sends. We could now just do this. So that way we could have like different effects sends on whatever track you have selected. If you have effect sends on it, you could now just control that. So that's all you'd have to do. So again, just double click once we have kind of the objects selected in the MIDI remote. You can come right over here. Let's go to the selected track, and then just choose your send slots. And if you're just kind of starting with the MIDI remote, you can just click on the plus sign, give it kind of a name. You could select a model number. I'll just do we'll give it kind of a MIDI in and out. And then you could just come right over here and say, okay, I wanted it to be a slider, or I want it to be a knob. And at that point, you could just move the knobs, and that will automatically have the, for every fader that you want, every knob that you want to control something, that would automatically do the routing. So, and then we could go to the mapping assistant for that particular controller and just assign for the selected track for the sends. Okay, so we see a question from DDP Music. Using direct offline processing, can you show how the different use for adding and tail options for reverbs and delays? And also congrats on the anniversary. Thank you for the kind words. So let's go back to, I'll revert this quickly. Okay, so let's say like I wanted to take this vocal and I'll take have a reverb on it. I'll just all right, so we'll just have, let's say, just a vocal.
I started losing.
All right, and I'll just take off my automation that we just did. All right, so we want to do our offline processing. So we're going to hit F7, and let's say we wanted to add a delay. So let's say our file is just kind of this long. All right, so when we go to, we'll just come over here. Let's add a delay. So we'll say, okay, I just want to do a mono delay. So if we don't have any time here, so we could extend the processing range in milliseconds, or we could add a tail. So now when I listen to it without that particular processing, and then it just like immediately cuts off. So let's say I wanted to do that processing, but let's add our tail. So now when we come here, or if we wanted to just select the particular range here, so we could just say, okay, as we do this, and I want to do my processing, so let's say, okay, let's do a quarter note delay. So we could have that just kind of carry over and do the extensions. Another easy way of kind of doing this is just to, like if you use the range selection tool, you could select longer and then just process with the delay on. So now if we just process, just deactivate that. So, and say, okay, we want eighth note delay. Or if you wanted to just process kind of longer within the field, you could just do it based on the range selection. So now if we wanted to just process that particular range, so you can play around with that. So it just allows you to kind of add a particular tail. All right, wonderful to see Ace Amadeus on. Jack B has a question. Can you recommend any control surfaces, hardware or software apps that accommodate a broad range of key commands? If you want it strictly for key commands, like I have a Elgato Stream Deck, and you could, build up different templates on the Elgato, and you have nested folders. So mine has 32 buttons. So for key commands, like I mapped every Cubase menu function, every sub function directly to all of the knobs on the Elgato Stream Deck. So that's a very popular one. So it's not necessarily set up for encoders. I think they just released one that has 4 encoders. But figure out and it could be that perhaps you want to use multiple small controllers. So in my setup, I have like a Choi Sauce 100 millimeter fader box. I have a CC121. I have a Korg Nano control, and I have the Elgato Stream Deck. In addition to, and they're all kind of within reach of each other on my desk. I also have a Nectar panorama, but I don't necessarily, I just kind of use the keys on that just because of how my furniture is laid out and the controls are kind of underneath the shelf. But, figure out how many knobs you want. If you can, the thing that's nice about the Elgato is you could have 32 buttons, but each of those buttons you could have folders of other buttons and folders within a folder within a folder. So, and you could actually see the label function on the screen. So that makes it pretty nice. So if you wanted just to do like fire off keyboard shortcuts, like an Elgato Stream Deck works really well. If you wanted to, have different faders or knobs, there's probably other options, and maybe combine two different types of controls depending on the work you want to do. All right, so we see a question from Solid Gold Entertainment. Hi, Greg. Jerry McLean here. Could you give your opinion on putting a compressor on the master bus while I do my master mix using Cubase 12 Pro? So it's a very common thing to do. I would say, a lot of people will put, the one thing that I would maybe not suggest is I see a lot of people that will take their master bus and for a project and load up kind of like a mastering chain preset, different plugins. And then as they record and they're doing all their project, they're kind of mixing through a master chain. And I can see where sometimes people find that might be a quick way to get stuff done. It may not be the best results. I would always try to make sure that the mix sounds great without any dynamics processing or, anything really kind of destructive on the master bus. And then if you need to make it, if you need to use like a little bit of compression, if you're taking it to a mastering engineer, they're not going to want you to, really tweak the dynamics. If it's going to be something that, is stopping at you then it could be more. It can make more sense to do dynamics processing there, but try to make your mix sound as great and full without the dynamics processing, and then if you have to, just add a little bit on the master bus, then do it at that point. But I think that people sometimes get a kind of like a false sense of what's going on in their mix when they're mixing and recording the whole process through a mastering chain. And I've been in the room with, several very prominent mix engineers, and this has happened 3 or 4 times where they've actually gotten a call from the mastering engineer. It's like, hey, don't rely on the processing. I think you could do the mix a little bit better. And it was pretty humbling for engineers of this stature to get that call, but they, after kind of taking another pass at it, they knew that it was the right call for the song. So it's fine to have dynamics processing. If you plan to send it off to mastering someone else, they would probably appreciate it if you were not so heavy-handed with compression. But if it's kind of ending with you the whole process, you could do it. But try to make the mix sound great without it. And then if needed, it could really kind of elevate the quality of the whole project. All right, so we see from Ace Amadeus, says the Void expansion for Retrolog. His question is, says I purchased the Steinberg, the Void expansion for Retrolog 2, but it's not appearing. I verified that it's installed. What else can I try to do to get it to work on Cubase 10.5? So if you could verify if you have the E license for it, or if it's on the Steinberg licensing, if you could let me know that, Ace, also, that'd be great. So if you could just check to see, that you do see it licensed, and it's probably going to be an e-licenser, I think. All right, so we see Kevin Mehmed asks, can't get my keyboard to work with Halligan 7. Please show me the audio connections and what to choose. You showed me some cool few minutes ago. You know my setup, Greg. Please show me again. So, when you come over, just open up the Halligan 7 again. So, if you're doing it as standalone, just get this opened quickly. So you'll see it's usually will default to all MIDI inputs, and make sure that make sure that you have like your MIDI in directly there. So you could choose your particular MIDI port. If it's running inside of Cubase, and again, all you'd have to do is just make sure that you have the MIDI port active directly for once you load it up, and then you could see the MIDI input port there. Okay, so we have a question from Val Liu. How do I line up the input buffer for recording audio to line up already, or do I always have to replace for perfect timing? Is there a secret trick? So usually, it's the latency is automatically compensated for, but check, see if you go to your studio menu to studio setup, try, make sure that you actually have this adjust for record latency. If you're noticing that there's latency while you're tracking, it could be because of plugins that are causing the extra latency. And if you go to the lower left-hand corner, if you wanted to bypass plugins that are kind of invoking latency or causing latency, there's this function here called the constrained delay compensation. So if you just simply enable constrained delay compensation, at that point, that will bypass plugins that are causing latency. So try those two things and see if that helps. But generally, it's kind of by default automatically compensated for, but the monitoring may be delayed. But the monitoring may be delayed because of plugins. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on. Wishing a happy hangoutiversary. So thank you. All right, so we see, does the new Steinberg license, is that was required to install the Void expansion for Retrolog 2? I tried a serial number, but Steinberg sent me on my e-licenser, but it didn't work. So if you may have gotten a download access code, Ace. So when you get your download access code, so say you go to the Steinberg download assistant. So I'm not sure if you installed it directly from here, but we'll launch the Steinberg download assistant. So I'm not sure which particular code you got, but it could be a download access code. So maybe just enter your download access code. So if you go to the Steinberg download assistant, at this point you can just click on enter your download access code. So try entering in the code there, and that may generate a license code that will then populate your e-licenser or populate the Steinberg licensing system. See, John Barry is just saying, hi, Greg, happy anniversary. Will Cubase 13 have unlimited undos? So we'll try. So, we're already at 1,744 hours in the last 3 years. So we'll try to get to unlimited. So. All right, we see Pablo. So happy to see Gareth on. All right, so we see from EVSD, can someone help me with streaming Cubase audio to other software, something like Discord or maybe YouTube? I use it could also depend on your audio interface. So if you had like a URC interface, like a Steinberg URC interface, you could enable loopback. So when you see loopback mode, you could just simply come right over here, and then that way your microphone could be connected into the audio input, and you could loop back and send it out to another application. So see if your audio interface has loopback. There's also some software alternatives. I think Voice Meter is one that people use on Windows a lot. It could be a little, it could be not the easiest thing to get set up, but I think that there are a number of tutorials on the Discord. So check out the Cubase Nation Discord. All right, we see Mark Rabin's going to have to watch later on YouTube, and just saying thanks for all the Cubase knowledge dumps, and we're glad that you're able to give a thumbs up. All right, we see that Gareth has bought the Guinness for St. Patrick's Day, so we hope that everyone is wearing green. If not, you'll have to pinch yourself. Luckily, my wife gave my son just a shirt that had a tiny green stripe because we forgot this morning. All right, we hope that Mark Rabin has a good walk with Stella, his dog. All right. All right, so we see from alternative scores, in the main window in the bottom area, there are tabs for mixer, editor, sampler control, chord pads, MIDI control. Is it possible to have them in this separate window, for example, on another screen? So yeah, if you just hit F3, you could just simply open up like the mixer in a different screen. If we wanted the mixer to be opened on, like, let's say if we're in a lower zone, you could always hit the little up arrow. See this little arrow that goes into the windows, like, it kind of points off to the right, and that will break it off into a separate window that could be set to a screen. And if we're in chord pads, I'm not sure if the chord pads do that because they're kind of only designed to work in the particular area. But with the MIDI remote, we could break that off, and you could choose and their keyboard shortcuts to open all of these up by default, in where you could open them up with a keyboard shortcut in the lower zone or open in the separate window. And one of the things you could also set is just a preference. If you go to editors, and you can say double click opens. So if you go to your preferences to editors, you can say double click opens in an edit window. So now if I just double click on a MIDI event, this will automatically open it in a separate window. And if that's on a separate screen, that will just automatically be retained on a separate screen. So check out some of those options. But, if you hit the up arrow that points to the right, at that point, it will kind of take it from the lower zone to a separate window. I think it does that for everything except for the chord pads, which were never designed for a separate window. So let me know if that helps. All right, so Gareth's saying happy hot messiversary. All right, so we have Jordan's happy to watch the stream. See, Gareth saying FM Lab is fabulous, but a deep dive is required. So it's much better than doing it on a 2x16 display on the original DX7, trying to do FM synthesis there. All right, just Chatfield jump. Let me just scroll back, find my spot. Sorry about that. See, Gareth said he created a macro to do reverse duplicates. All right, so I see from Andreas Horn says key command, can you display? So maybe if you could let me know what key command you wanted to see. Sometimes by the time I get to it, I'm 20 to 30 minutes behind. So, but if you could let me know what key command you wanted to see, I'd be happy to show you. See Frito just saying, hi Greg, thank you for the answers in his stream so far, and he added timestamps always afterwards. So yeah, that's why I do my Tuesday and Friday nights. Okay, so we see Frito just asking one more question. How can I improve the video performance of the video window in Cubase Pro 12? When I play an MP4 file, it doesn't play fluid and only really refreshes when I click on the video. So sometimes, video is unfortunately different than what we typically expect with like a WAV file, because each video, there's kind of thousands of different codecs that are being utilized. So sometimes what happens is, maybe if you could try a different codec or convert it to a particular codec, and if you wanted to know the best ones that are being utilized for Cubase, I'll just open this up. So just do I just Google video support and Steinberg products. And here you can see kind of the codec and container combinations. So often what happens with videos is you have a codec, and that's a compressor decompressor. So sometimes, if there's less compression on the file, it's easier for it to play. So, and if it is more compressed, then the computer has to decompress the video on playback, and that could cause it to not be as responsive. So maybe try to convert it to one of the formats that's in that particular help article. So again, that's the video support in Steinberg products. And I think if you probably try a different codec, that may help. Also, your video card, if you're on Windows, may have a big impact on this as well. All right, so we see how can I automate multiple parameters using one automation? So I'm not sure if you want to, change different parameters. So let's say if we go to our mix console, and let's say, if we activate Q-Link, so let's say I have these channels selected, that they'll all be moved, or if we want it to come over here to, let's add an effect to all these. So while we have Q-Link active, we can come over, and if we just wanted to go to, and now let's say if I wanted to adjust the size, that is going to be set for all of the different plugins. Will have the same settings. And sometimes, so I'm not sure if you want to do kind of the same parameters on different tracks, or if you wanted to have different parameters on from one single fader. And that gets to be, some people like that, and some people find it very problematic, because they could still be kind of writing automation unintentionally to particular tracks. So, generally everything is kind of done on a one-to-one relationship in Cubase for automation, just so it's very clear to the user. We used to be able to do it, and then people complained that they were, they would just grab something and they would automate one little tiny thing, and there was changes being made in other tracks that they weren't aware of. So. All right, so we see Johnny Lizard asks how to color whole tracks, not only the beginning. Okay, so let's say if we're here. All right, so let's say if I'm here, so I'm just going to select the track, and now I'm just going to select a color from here. So I do my track color. Each of the colors will automatically update on that track. So maybe instead of just selecting the event, select the track, and then if you just set the color, we could do this with the color tool as well. Once that's active, and then all the events on that track can change to the same color. See, Pablo's asking where Michael Teens is, that he wants his ice cream. So hopefully he'll be joining soon. All right, so we see, hi, could you show the onion skin view function in the piano roll for a different part? Okay, so let me just look at a different, maybe not an onion skin feature, but if you want to look at multiple parts. Just find a project I was thinking of. Here we go. Okay, so let's say I wanted to look at my oboe and cello parts. So I'm going to select both of these, just holding down Control or Command, and then we'll open up the editor. All right, so I'm going to choose to switch the visibility here to channel, or we'll set it to part. So now if we go into our kind of our full screen editor, so we could see both of the events, and we could choose which is active. So if I want the cello to be active, or if we just click on a particular part, this is now the active part. So if we wanted to look at the velocity, or if I select a different part, so let's say I want to go from the oboe, now I want to edit the cello, we can see that all the velocities for the cello will be apparent. So that way you could look at multiple tracks kind of all at once. So just select them, and then you could hit Control or Command plus the letter E for edit, and then be able to open up multiple parts, and you could switch back and forth between them. All right, so we have Razel checking in from Denmark. Glad you can make it today. All right, we have Camille checking in from Czech Republic. Thanks for being on. All right, Gareth is serving Guinness for everyone, probably in honor of St. Patrick's Day. All right, so we see podcasting voice processing chain, please. So probably what I would just do to start off, is look at, you'll see under track presets. So let's say we'll come over here to presets. Let's go to track presets, go to audio, and then look at voice. So we see like a number of different vocals. So at this point, so let's say we just wanted to, probably even something like this particular preset. So let's say if I just drag this over, so there's a number of different, presets for voice. So, check out like Alan Morgan, who's done different presets But, for voice, you could really probably get by with, things just in a particular channel strip as well. So say if we come here and we'll look at our particular track. So we could do EQ. You may want to have like noise gate. So let's say if I just move my gate here so that if we wanted to filter out like any kind of like maybe room noise, so that the signal is only heard when it crosses a particular threshold. A little bit of EQ for a lot of voice stuff for podcasting. If you want to just kind of look at the EQ view here, probably just doing like a quick high cut or low cut. So if we wanted to just come over here, we could activate this and roll off some of the low end. Also within the channel strip, we have the ability to have a touch of compression, and you'll see under tools de-essing. So maybe if you just want to have like your de-esser first before compression, so you could kind of change the orders, but probably a bit of a noise gate. I would do, if you need to have de-essing, compression, and a touch of EQ, and that will probably get you by for 99% of all of your vocal processing. All right. So you see from Harry Olive, hi Greg, can I rework and rename a Media Bay kick sample and replace it in all existing events when I previously used the original sample in my project? If yes, how? So probably the easiest way to do that, Harry, is is maybe not renaming the files. There could be like some consequences with that down the road. But if you wanted to replace like all instances of a particular sample, what I would probably do, and we see this a lot with people wanting to replace like kick drums and stuff like that, especially in EDM projects. So let's say if I was here, and let's say I wanted to find like a sample to replace every time that this sample came in. So I'm gonna come over here to loops. Let's say Groove Agent Library, and I'll just say, okay, let's find kick drums. All right, and I'll just put this into a quick loop. So is drag it over the file, hold down the shift key and release, and you'll get this. Do you want to replace, modify all events that refer to that same audio material? So maybe just select the file and drag it over and hold down the shift key. And then you could replace every instance of the file without having to rename it. So drag it over, hold down the shift key before releasing the mouse. So, and then you could update and replace all the audio files just that easily. Just drag it over, hold down the shift key before releasing the mouse button, and then it should be all set. Let me know if that'll work for you. All right, so we have Enzo Mag checking in from RSA. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, we have a question from Ace Amadeus. Hi, Greg. Can we load old TX-802 SysX sounds into FM Lab? Can you do an example of that? So I think it'll work. I think it's I'm pretty sure the TX802. I think it's what I've heard is TX81Z and FM7, but I think it would probably be very similar. So if you are in FM lab, let's go over to. So if you go to the import, you could just come right over here and import the SysX directly from here. So, and you could switch mode from DX7 to FMX, which is going to be like the montage mode, but just kind of pick the folder here. I don't have any SysX files, but you could just select the folder right there. So give it a shot. Okay, so we see from Braxel, says, I got the Cubase 12 trial, and I'm wondering why I cannot track howling in 7 just by clicking notes on the plugin. I have set up as an instrument track, and it's armed. So, when you go to, these keys that you see on Hallian, so these will audition the notes in the instrument, but they don't actually track, they don't transmit MIDI into the program. So if you wanted to do something like that, what you could do is just hold down Alt or Option plus the letter K, and then you could get a virtual keyboard, and you could trigger the virtual keyboard using your computer keyboard. But these keys are really set to audition the different sounds and not necessarily transmit MIDI from here into Cubase. But if you need that, you get to go to the on-screen keyboard, and it may look kind of like this when you first open it up. So you could, and then if you click in the lower right-hand corner, and then you could switch to octaves here. So this keyboard doesn't transmit, but other keyboards, or if you have a real MIDI controller, will be able to be used. See, Quankify just says, congratulations on 3 years. Gareth says, my son knocking on a door is one of Timbaland's top go-to samples. So, and Gareth's just saying he's met tons of fabulous people here on the live stream. So, I really kind of cherish all the friendships I've made as well, and just what a wonderful community is. All right, Mark in Kansas City just says congrats, and he's not smart enough to ask questions. So there's the only dumb question is if you have a question and you just don't ask it. So ask any questions that you want, and thank you for the kind words. All right, so a question, real-time rendering versus fast rendering. What is the difference? I get more clarity if I record it from the session, if itself from the master to a track. What do you think, Greg? Thank you. So, some functions need to be kind of passed in real time. So, if you wanted to record, so let's say if I have my Hallion 7 here and I wanted to record, MIDI and audio at the same time. So there's no difference in quality. So let me just come over. So say, okay, I want to take this and I'm going to route this instrument to a group. And we'll make it a stereo group. And now I'm going to add an audio track, and we want the input to come from the group. All right, so now when we play this, and this is like where people may want to do like a real-time render. All right, and let me just check the audio outs of this. Okay, so we're going to send this to a group. All right, so in this case, if I wanted to record both MIDI and audio simultaneously, this is like when real time is good for. So now, and that's like a good use of like real-time rendering. So I know people that just, want to capture the audio, maybe they get a trial version of a plugin and it's like, quick, capture it as audio before the trial period runs out. You could do that. But there's no real sonic difference either way unless you've altered it specifically between kind of real-time rendering and doing quicker than real time. It used to be there's kind of often a misconception kind of due to older competitive systems that could only do real time rendering because it physically had to be processed through the DSP. And, so some people felt that it was better that way, but it was really just a limitation of, particular architecture for an audio engine. But it doesn't make any difference either way. Say, Luis Alejo says, I didn't know this existed. This seems way too advanced, though. But any question that you have, whether it's, the most basic beginner question or an advanced question, please feel free to ask Luis. All right, so we see what is the difference between an MP3 and an MP4. So they're really just compressed audio file formats. So MP4 is often used by Apple products, and MP4 is a container which could also include video files. Generally, video isn't included in MP3. But they're both just different containers, different file formats for compressed audio. But generally MP4 it could be more widely used for video. All right, and we see from Kevin, will there be greater than an MP4 ever? So I'm sure that, if you just have a raw file, that will always be better quality. Just realize that when you're kind of doing an MP4 file, it's compressing the contents. But just because you have an MP4 container, you'd have different codecs that have different levels of compression. And Gareth explains it well. All right, so Ace asks, hi Greg, his question, can we run USB-E licenser and also the new Steinberg licenser during the same projects? Thanks. So yeah, definitely. So I still have some older plugins, like one or two that are still on the USB-E licenser, but the vast majority of everything I'm doing is on the Steinberg licensing now. But yeah, you can run both of them together. All right, so Pablo asks, maybe he remembered his question. It's great. How to create a preferred offline process? I found, or maybe it only happens to be an error in offline processing, which by default, the last process is stored. If you want to reapply it, it doesn't. You must recreate it. All right, so let's say we'll go back to, like I think in Pablo's honor, we'll do it on some drums here. So let's say we have. Okay, so let's say at this point I wanted to select my drum tracks, and let's go do just an offline process. So let's say, okay, I want to run this through plugins. So let's say I want to do maybe like a magneto, and let's go make high frequency adjustment. All right, so we can see that that's now being processed. Let's run it through like an envelope shaper. So we'll come over here to dynamics. And I'll adjust my output level down a little bit. All right, now if I like these, what you could do is, let's say I'll go over here to my favorites. I think what we could do is let's just drag these down. Let me just. All right. So, and then we could store that as a favorite. Let me just delete that. So let's say we do our envelope shaper. I think that we could. All right, let me just delete this again. So let's get to select envelope shaper. And I think if we have this set up, just to remove these. So let's say if I had it on one particular track, so say I want to go to the envelope shaper and the magneto. So let's say I have these set up kind of as I like. I'm going to just select a particular audio track and we'll open up F7. So I think if we just remember there's like a little all right, so let's say if I get to lower zone, then we can do it from here. Let me just get to our mix console, say our lower zones. I want to take these particular tracks. I could drag that processing in, and we'll give it a name. So we'll call it Pablo. So now, anytime that I liked that particular setup, and I go to NER project, we could have my Pablo chain. So let me just see if I can remember. And there's a way of doing it from inserts here. Let me just see if I can remember. So, but if you just go like directly from here, you can just drag over and make a preset. So let me just trying different modifier keys, but there's a way to do it from the inspector. But if you just grab from kind of the top area here on the track, so we'll come to our mixer. So just we see the plus sign and then just drag it over and give it a name, and then you could store that as a preset that could call up in any other projects. If I do new project Pablo, and we go to our, we can see that we'll have all of our presets kind of mapped out for us right here. So let me know if that's helpful. See, John Barry for the question about the controller it says the Behringer X-Touch Mini has a nice mix of knobs and lots of buttons and not too expensive. All right. So we see Chris Howlam from Athens, Georgia, asks, reinstalled my Cubase 12 and imported the save profile, but my keyboard shortcuts seem to not have carried over. Did I miss a step? So one of the things that you could always try with this is just when you go to your keyboard shortcuts, so a lot of people modify the keyboard shortcuts and come over here. Try saving your keyboard shortcuts as a preset and then re-export the profile. So sometimes it may not carry over if it's not like specifically written as a preset. So try to save the preset and give it a name. And then if you export the profile, I think they'll be carried over for you, Chris. See Brian Sawyer's nice kind words saying happy anniversary, Greg. 3 years of helping me and many others. Thank you. You're welcome. And it's always great to see you on the live stream and see you on the Zoom meetups. So this month, I'm going to be on vacation on the 31st, which is the normal Zoom meetup. So we'll be doing our Zoom meetup, I think, on the 28th. So like a week from Tuesday. So just a quick heads up on that. Okay, so you see Lewis just asked, is there any swing presets, ways to preview swing types and then add it to the track, for example, in live when you have a groove pool with the MPC, Akai presets, for example, among others. So, I mean, you could do it quite easily. So let's say if I was, let me just jump back to a different project. there's a couple ways of doing this quite easily. So let's say we revert this because I've destroyed it pretty well. Okay, so I'll just program just a quick beat here. All right, and I'll just solo this. So let's say we'll just program like most generic drum beat of all time. Okay. All right, and let me just get mute. We'll just solo this real quick. All right. All right, so let's say we'll just come. I'll just do just one bar here, speed it up. All right, so let's say I have like super generic drum beat here. So one of the ways is, if you wanted to just go to like a MIDI insert, you could go to the quantizer plugin and just add swing directly here. So you could just, add swing. And once you go to any quantize preset, you could just say, okay, I want to quantize it to eighth notes, but I wanted to add 70% on the swing. So I can just come here. And you could adjust the swing and see it visually. So let's say we'll do this as 16th note swings here. So. And then you could just come right over here and save different quantized presets. So once you have this saved, you could just open up different quantized presets. You could also say, okay, I like the feel of this groove. So let's say I like this drum loop. And if you wanted to just go into the hit points, so we'll double click, go to hit points, and just say, okay, let's create groove. So we watch our quantized preset here. I'll just say, okay, I'm going to take the groove of this and automatically apply it as a preset as well. So it may not be where it's just like drag and drop on, but then you kind of have the same feel as everyone else, but you could easily, using a MIDI plugin for the quantizer or using the swing in the particular field. And if you go to quantize here, you could adjust the swing parameters, directly. So let's say if you wanted to, just adjust. So if we say, okay, let's make this straight 16ths, that once you have this done, you could also apply your quantized swing directly here. So anytime that you do quantizing, so it's more just a part of quantizing itself. All right. So we see, hi Greg, please, 4-point editing in action. So I think we showed this on the last one, but we'll repeat it real quick. So let's say, let me just find a project that'll be good for. Okay, so let's say we want to do kind of like more 4-point editing. So let's say if I have these events, let's say I had in, this is often used in classical music for, or kind of more traditional, like comping a multi-track performance. So I'm going to take this, let's take all these tracks and we could assign them into a folder. So we will just, all right, so we'll call this our source. And now I want to duplicate the folder. All right, and we'll call this our destination. All right, and I just want to get rid of all my destination tracks, and I'll just put it at top. I'm going to do a divide track list. So click on this little icon here. And I want my destination track to be above the track list. So, all right, so now I have folder track. So if you want, let me just try this. So like I say, I like this particular section. What we're able to do is just say, okay, I want to, let's grab the range tool, and I'm just going to hold down and say, okay, I like the beginning of this performance. I'm going to hold down control or command plus shift, and I'm just going to drag it to, I'll just select it without the folder. So I'm going to select all of these parts, and I'll just hide my lower zone for now. Sorry, I'm just. All right, so let's say I have something like this. So I want to take all of these particular events, and then I'm just going to hold down, move them while holding down the Alt key. And then we just. So let's say if I just move them up here. So, all right, so we have that. And now I want to take, I play this performance so we could mute the particular folder and say, okay, so I listened to that. Now I want these particular files at this point. So I'm going to just come right over here and move the events just kind of like that. So we can say, okay, now I want to take these files and move it over. So you could just kind of, and if like I forgot to hold down the Alt or Option key, but now I could just move over the particular files just like this. And then you could kind of have source destination editing, and you could just solo the folders and go back and forth like that. Okay. So Mike Rivera asks, Greg, when working on a template, how can I bounce out stems on tracks with music information, not the other unused stem for mixing? Okay, so how can I bounce out stems on tracks with music information and not the other unused stem for mixing? All right, so when you were doing a batch export, so let's say if I have tracks that have, let me just come back. Okay, so let's say I have tracks that are that have no data on them. Okay, so we'll come here. So what you could do is if you go to like the project logical editor, right? So what I'm going to do is just to select tracks that don't have, I want to select tracks that don't have data on them. So we're going to choose to select, we'll say container type is equal to track. And the condition we want is the property is set to event is empty. We'll say is not set to empty. Okay, so now when we do this, we have tracks that don't have any data on them. So what this will do, if I did it correctly, is to, all right, let me just try without my divided track list. All right, so let me say, if we have folder tracks, we might have to and said parent object is selected. Okay. All right, let me just try this one more time. Okay, so we're going to say the property is not set to is empty. Okay, so now if we do this, this will select all tracks that have data on them. And now when we go to export our audio mix down, so we go to export audio mix down. And what we want to do now is you'll see this little icon here. So once we're in multiple, that we could just choose to synchronize the selection and the channel selection. So now when we do multiple, we could just only have the tracks that actually have data on it. So we could do folder tracks, group tracks. So again, we want to select tracks that, we're going to say select tracks, an event that's equal to a track, and the property is not set to is empty. So if it is empty, then it's going to be ignored and not selected. And then once you get a multiple, you could just choose to sync the selection to the channel track selection. And that way you don't export empty tracks. All right, so we have Gareth's daughter Lola saying hi. So wish her the best for us. I thought her little video that you shared on Facebook was cute. Didn't understand all the Spanish though, but. All right, so Little Wing Audio asks, sidechain compression is my question. Could you demo a few tracks with and without sidechain compression? Okay, so let me just go to this particular project here. All right, so as we listen to it, all right, so let's say I want the bass here to have compression on it. So at this point, let's say our bass is kind of loud. right? But let's say I wanted to actually be sidechained. So this, when we do compression, could just kind of, compress the signal not based on any input. But if we go to activate sidechain, and then we say, okay, I want the sidechain to be triggered from the kick track. Now, as soon as the kick track comes in, at that point, so, and we could play around with the release time if we wanted to. Or how fast the attack is. And we could also, when we go to our setup here, you could set the amount of dB that's driving it. So now as we... So now like the kick track can be heard more. So if I turn off sidechaining, so at that point you could just have like kind of the one track kind of come through more. So sometimes people will sidechain vocals or dialogue in a film so that other elements are down so that the dialogue is always heard, but kind of kick and bass and EDM is also kind of a typical function for sidechain compression usage. So we see Cubase 13 anytime soon. So nothing I could share with you, but I could assure you that the development team is working hard on it. So you see from Kevin Mehmed, which is the most amount of downloads for Cubase Pro 12 Windows or Cubase 12 Max. I think that Windows still edges it out, but I haven't seen the figures in a number of years. I usually kind of get those things when I'm in Hamburg. I will just kind of usually ask, but I haven't been to Hamburg since COVID started. So, but I think Windows may edge it out, but I don't know for sure what the ratio is. And it's just kind of speculation on my end. All right, so we see a question. Is there a way to lock automation volume in Cubase in the negative or positive values? Let's say we're going plus 3.77 dB random values, so I could set that as a ceiling, same as for negative values. A lot of people would, use like kind of dynamics processing for this. But I think if we draw it in, that we could, that it's not going to filter it, but we could say we might be able to do something in the project logical editor. So we'll come over here. Not sure if we could do it, but let's see. So we'll say we want to transform automation. Yeah, so we could do length and property, but I don't think is set to. Yeah, there's not a way to set kind of the value that I know of. Let me just, okay, so say. Yeah, so not like with a specific range, but what you could do, and this is more, like if you wanted to select, let's say we select all the automation on a particular track, is, just to compress the automation values as you see fit, but it may not do it by, minus 2.77 dB, something like that. But you could do something, easily kind of compress or expand to kind of keep it within a particular range easily just once the automation is selected. So just come and compress or expand. But I don't know of a way. I mean, we could probably if we set our maximum value of minus, we could set it there, but that may be kind of taking proportionality for lower values. But if you wanted to achieve kind of the same thing, just kind of grab the automation by the side here. Let me know if that will work for you, Jeweler to Rocket. All right, so Manio Beats just saying hi to everyone. All right. So we just see a lot of keyboards these days are going away of Bluetooth MIDI and don't have MIDI DIN sockets. I think that, most of the keyboards would have, instead of MIDI socket is going to be maybe having more of, USB connections for MIDI. So, but, I think that the Bluetooth MIDI, we have support for it inside of Cubase on Windows or Mac. So it's already supported. But I think the far more common connection would still be USB. All right. And we have Getachu joining us from Ethiopia. Thanks for joining us today. So just see Lewis just saying for the streaming Cubase guy, I assume that's me. Sonobus with OBS works too. You can stream it to Discord, YouTube, anywhere. You can set up OBS with Sonobus on your stereo bus once, and you could use it forever. So, but if I create new projects, I don't, want to always have to add a plugin so that you hear it. So that's kind of what I would like. Why I kind of use kind of a different system so I don't have to have plugins always resident to be heard because I change settings constantly during the live streams. All right, so we see PZ136 for C13. I'd like an upgrade to the media bay like in Halion 7. So, currently they are working together with like ratings and different stuff like that. All right, so we see, all right, when Chatfield just jumped on me. Okay, so we see from Ace Amadeus, hi Greg, would you please remind us how to set up Cubase 12 to recognize old hardware like D50, Yamaha TG500 modules, and is it possible to view the patch names on Cubase 10.5 or Cubase 12? So yeah, to do this, I mean, it's not automatically recognized because those devices don't have any don't communicate that. But if we go to your studio menu, let's go to your MIDI port setup. Let me just. Okay, go to your MIDI device manager rather. So at this point, you would just say, okay, let's install device. All right, so let's say, okay, I have a D50 Roland. Okay. At this point, I want my D50 to go out of this particular port. Okay. And now when we go to add a MIDI track, all right, so we'll call it Ace. Let's go to, we're going to select our D50 output. So we'll just say our D50 is going out of this port. And then we could see all your D50 patches directly there. So if you want to go to load up Staccato Heaven and pretend it's 1989 all over again. So I still love my D550 I have. So, but again, go to Studio, to more options, to MIDI device manager, click on install device, and there's a lot of different Yamahas. I think the TG500 is really just a XG device. So you could set it up as an XG device as well to be able to. So. And you could always make your own patch scripts as well, just simple text files. All right, so you just see from Barack, how can we do this gradient color channels? Okay, so if you wanted the mix console channels to be colorized, you would go to Preferences and go to under User Interface, Track and Mix Console Channel Settings. And then you'll see Mix Console Channels. Just hit Apply. So right now there's no colors. If you enable the Mix Console Channel colors, then you could see the colors. And you could adjust the intensity as well. All right, so we see Patrick asks, great to see you on. Glad you can make it today. Hi, Greg. How to group tracks, 3 or more group tracks grouped as one? Okay, so let's say I have like these going to a group track. All right, so I'll add a group track to this. So we'll just say, okay, we'll add group channel to selected tracks. And let's say for these two, I want to do same thing. Add a group channel and let's say for these drums, I want to add a group channel here. All right, so we have groups 2, 3, and 4. So what I want to do now is we could take our group channels. I'll just select holding down Control or Command. And now I want to right click and add group channels to the selected channels. So now we'll have our group channel here that's going to be group 5, which will be a sum of all of our different groups here. And so you can add groups going to groups going to groups, and no consequences for delay compensation. All right, so I have a question this from Couscous. Is it possible to make the monitor option active only during recording and inactive during playback? All right, so let's do a new project here so we can just show it. Okay, so let's say we go to preferences to VST, and let's say we just want to do tape machine style recording. So now, all right, so I'm just going to hit record. All right, so now when we play back, the monitor is turned off. So when it's in play, the monitor could be on as soon as it's playing back. So, but if we have this, I believe the default state is set to manual. So you can have the auto monitoring on while record enabled, while record running, or tape machine style. I always prefer tape machine style. So now my monitor is still on when it's playing after recording. So we punch in. All right, I stop. We play. The monitor is still turned on. So again, just come over to your preferences and try setting auto monitoring to tape machine style. And now, as we record, stop, play, that the monitor is automatically disabled. All right, wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer is on. All right, we see Jay Hatchie just wishing congratulations on Club Cubase 3rd anniversary. All right, so we were about 2 hours in, so let's take a quick break before I forget, and let's do some trivia. So I'm going to switch my screen over quickly so I can monitor kind of the real-time communication while we do this. So we're going to ask questions, and basically the prize is, we don't want to necessarily give you a copy of Cubase if you have a copy of Cubase. So if there's a Steinberg title that you want, like, maybe Absolute 5, Absolute 6 would be really great, or I want Hallian 7 that just came out, or I want Wavelab or Spectral Layers. We could do that, but so let's go ahead and so I'm going to ask questions, and the questions are going to be, involving people that are on the live stream. So if you have a if the question is about you, try to refrain from answering it. And the first person that gets the correct answer, you can email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Tell me which Steinberg title you want, and then we'll try to get it all sorted out for you. So let me just jump over to some of our questions. Okay, so first live stream trivia question. All right, and there could be we'll do two parts of the question. If you get any part of the question right, okay. So Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California, mentioned that he was playing oboe on a particular piece, a classical piece, recently. Does anyone remember what piece Jeff Zabelski mentioned that he was performing recently? So let me just monitor our live responses. So what piece did Jeff Zabelski perform recently on oboe? And I know there's about a 20 to 30 second delay from when I talk. All right, Nick wins again with Peter and the Wolf. All right, congratulations, Nick. All right, so if you want to email me again, Nick has won the last two. He pays careful attention. All right, and we also see other people mentioning. All right. So for our second prize, let me go to my live stream trivia here. Okay, and this was just on Tuesday. See if anyone was yet to, I don't think anyone will get this, so I'll be surprised if anyone does. But this, I'll grant you, this could be hard. What Yamaha sales rep from Southern California was on the live stream on Tuesday? I'll be impressed if anyone gets this. So what Yamaha sales rep or district manager's official title was from Southern California was on the live stream on Tuesday? You see Gareth just saying Nick has a brain, not fair. So Tim Weinheimer says, yes, that's a hard question. I believe that he does live near Mission Viejo, Tim. So, see. See Fernando, no. Chris Bristol, no. Pablo saying that I'm the Yamaha rep, so, but I don't live in Southern California. It's a C capitalist question. All right. Daniel Berger. Nope, that's not it. Mike Welch. That's from Soren. It's a good guess. Not correct. All right. So I think that's going to be, we'll move on to the next question. I have other questions. All right. So we'll end that. I'll just give it a couple of seconds to see if anyone gets it. It was a really tough question. See Dean Spears? No. We see, is it Rick? No, not Rick. Dave. All right. All right. So we're going to move on to our next question. Which live stream attendee went to Ukraine over the Christmas holidays to help with drone operations? So once again, which live stream attendee went to Ukraine over Christmas to help with drone operations? All right, we'll see if anyone remembers this. So again, which live stream attendee went to Ukraine over Christmas to help with drone operations? All right, let's see if there's any. So it's not Michael Wagner. Michael Pierce says he's just delivering the drones. All right, so we see Gareth just saying the previous question, Yamaha rep John Barry. So no, that's not right. Okay, so I'll give this another 10 or 15 seconds. And we'll see if there's any response. If not, we'll close out. Oh, Pablo has come through with the answer for the previous questions. Neil Patton. So I'm going to give Pablo credit for Neil Patton. So I'm not sure if he went through the chat field from the previous one or not, but Neil Patton for the Yamaha rep is the correct answer. So Pablo and Nick, if you want to email me, we will get your prizes, figure out what you want. So Nick is, I think, one Absolute and Wave Lab. So he's been very lucky with that. All right. So congratulations to both of you guys. Let me know if you. So we'll go ahead and do this another time. I want to thank everyone for the questions, and we see that even if they are hard, that we could find different stuff out. So congratulations to Nick and to Pablo. So please email me at clubcubase@Steinberg, and we will get the prizes sorted out for you. And the answer to who went over to Ukraine was Daniela. So she and her husband went over. So I thought that was very interesting. All right, so I have some more questions for future live stream trivia, but thank you so much for playing. And let's go back so we could get a bunch more questions answered. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So we have a question from Harry Olive. When playing exactly on the metronome beat with my MIDI keyboard, all notes are recorded prior the exact note for a 30-second note or less than a 30-second note. Is there a way to fix this? So if you go to, let's say your studio setup and go to MIDI port setup on Windows. So I'm not sure if you're on Windows or Mac, but if you're on Windows, you'd see kind of like a little bottom area where you could choose to use system timestamp or so you'll see some other options there. So try selecting the particular MIDI port and then see if you try to turn on use system timestamp. Also, just out of curiosity, if you use the virtual keyboard, and it's not in the Mac version, unfortunately. But if you go to the virtual keyboard, see if you do this and play kind of on the beat. If you notice that it has the same timing problems, I bet you won't, that it's going to be like the MIDI driver that's causing that. So let's go to, again, your studio setup, to your MIDI port setup. And on a Windows platform, you'll see use system timestamp or some other settings. And I think if you kind of set that up, that will fix the problem for you. All right. Wonderful to see Gerald Ely on from Martinez, California. All right. So we see from Patrick, Greg, select multiple tracks and change the name. Is it possible? Because this is really hard to keep typing for synth layers. All right. So let's say if I added a number of instrument tracks here. Okay, so if I select these, let's go to, we can do it in a project logical editor. So we could just say we want to transform, container type is track, and we'll say selected track. And this may not be as faster than typing over, but we can show you how you could do this if you, so let's say we're going to do property is set to track is selected, and let's give it name, and we'll set name. So let's say we want to replace name, and we'll say synth layer awesome. And now we could just come over here. I'll just give it a I'm sorry. I had it set incorrectly. So you could do it like that. Another quick way of doing it is if you type in a name. So let's say we wanted to call this Patrick. And if you copy, so let's say you just kind of select. So it would copy. And then if you hit the tab key, paste, hit the tab key, paste. So you could navigate to, like, once you have the name open, if you hit the tab key, that will automatically just allow you to go directly, activate the naming field, go to the naming field. So you could just paste. So we could say, okay, Club Cubase. So copy one, tab, paste, tab, paste. So that may be a faster way of doing it. So let me know if that's helpful, Patrick. All right, so we have from MPS Livestream. Hi, Greg, just encountered a problem. I rendered a MIDI kick drum to a file, but I have some kick hits on the grid that pop. If I slide them a few ticks off the grid, the file plays fine, no pop. So I'm not sure if while you're doing that, if you still have the original file playing back, like the MIDI playing back on top of the rendered file. So if I slide them a few ticks off the grid, then the file plays fine, no pop. So if you could, for MPS Livestream, if you could let me know if the MIDI is playing back with the rendered file or if the rendered file is the only thing that's playing back, that would be helpful. All right, so we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Greg, how to render or bounce with effect if I add delay. I need that on audio. All right, so let's go back to a different project here quickly. Okay, so let's listen to, let's say we have, I'll just come here to this file and just mute drum loop here. All right, so let's say we have reverb. I'll take off my loop. Okay, so let's say we want to get to my sends, and I'll just add a delay. All right, and let me just adjust the feedback on it.
I started
All right. So we'll come here. Okay, so let's say I want to render these two clips. So if we go to File, or go to Edit, and let's go to Render in Place. We'll go to our render settings, and I want the complete signal path. And so at this point, I'll just say render, and we can mute the source events. And I think I had it. Make sure it's not. So I'll just do the file here. So again, render in place, choose complete signal path. And now as we listen to the file, the reverb and the delay will be embedded in the file.
I started losing sight of place.
So that's all you had to do. So when you go to the render in place settings, again, come over here, render in place, and we'll make sure that we have complete signal path turned on. If you have channel settings or dry, that won't include the sends. The inserts, channel strip, and EQ will be included in the channel settings. And if you want the sends and the master effects, you could just come here to and choose complete signal path. All right, so we see Ace Amadeus ask, Greg, does Halion 7 come standard with Cubase Pro 12, or is there an upgrade from Halion 6 by installing Halion 7? And by installing Halion 7, delete my Halion 6 plugin and its sounds. So Halion 7 is sold separately, so it's not part of Cubase. You can upgrade from Halion 6 to Halion 7. All of your sounds, everything will be preserved for you. So, and you'll get the FM Lab and all sorts of wonderful new features and tails. So you'll have that. See, Gerald Ely just says to Filtered Waters, says, I know how you feel. I just watched, listened, and took notes for the first 3 months that he attended. So we're glad you came out and started saying hi and asking questions, Gerald. All right, so Parabot to ask, do I need to write down my code when I purchased Cubase 12 Artist, or is it stored in your account? So I think you'll have an email with the download access code. So you should have it in your email. I believe it's going to be in your account. May not be after once it's been utilized, but once you authorize it once, then you don't need that code again. So it's just kind of associated with your My Steinberg account. So once it is authorized and running, then you don't need to have access to the code, but you could always jot it down if you need to. So. So we see Lewis just asking if he could post YouTube videos here for colleagues. So yeah, it's only the moderators could do it. So I don't think it'll allow you to post a link. So. All right, so we see Uno Momento is a little bit late because of daylight saving time. So yeah, hopefully, I think, yeah, my meetings this week with all my European colleagues have been interesting. An hour later for us. All right, so Charles Alexandra asks, Is there a way to link two frequency EQ and have only the gain parameter be inverted on one of them, boost on one track that could cut the same amount on the second track? I don't know of a way that to do that. Let me see if we could play around with it some. So let's just come to all right. So say we want to be boosted on one and inverted on the other at the same time. So just okay, so okay, so let's see if we might be able to approach it from a MIDI remote. So, generally it's kind of a one-to-one relationship. But let's see if I go here. All right, so let's say we'll do 5 and 6 just to make it easier. So we'll pick up for MIDI remote mapping. All right, so now I think it's going to be kind of sorry. Okay, so now we close this. All right, so let's say if you might have to do it with 2 faders, but I think that we might be able to invert. So let's say if I want to do this one. Yeah, so I think it's going to. So if I move 2 faders. Let me try with a remote that I made. So I think it's going to need to be 2 different mappings. But let's see if I think that there is maybe some clever way of maybe it's in the mapping assistant. Let me just. Yeah, so I don't know of a way to control kind of both of the parameters, like two parameters at once, doing inverted values. But I'll play around with it. If you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. Sorry about that. All right. All right, so we see from Ace Amadeus, thanks for looking into my Retrolog 2 expansion. Steinberg sent activation code that did not work on eLicenser. Should I try the new Steinberg license? So yeah, try the new Steinberg Activation Manager and see if that works. So I don't know. It's not some third-party stuff is migrated over. So. All right, so we see Arcal773 says check in from Chi-Town. Don't know anyone else uses Cubase here. I don't understand why it's elegant, powerful, and limitless. So yeah, there's lots of we used to have a kind of pre-COVID. We used to have a very active Club Cubase. So there's lots of Cubase users in Chicago. All right, wonderful to see Bruce Bruton checking in from Simi Valley, where it's sunny today. All right, so we see, is it easy to transfer Reaper projects into Cubase 12? If it could be done, can you show me? So, yeah, I don't think most of the DAWs aren't going to have a direct translation, so you probably export as, I've never run Reaper, but you could probably export as an AAF or OMF files. If not, you could probably just import all of your audio files and have it, and move it to the timestamp position. So if you record an audio file into Cubase, let's say we're here and we record, it will have a tempo stamp. So let's say if I take this file and move it, and I could select this file or that event, and we'll say go to edit, and we'll say move to origin. So as long as it has kind of like a timestamp in the file, which is pretty typical, then you could take all your files over. So, but I've never run Reaper. So, all right. So we have Etab Buntu, just saying he's from Mauritius. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, but thanks for being on. All right, so we see DL White is checking in from Fort Worth. He's doing a session and taking notes with time codes. Might publish them one day. So I have a Word document that has, I think it's like 500 pages of all the indexes. And you could also check out cubaseindex.com if you haven't seen that. And it's very nice for Jan to have created that. All right, so we see, hi, how to export binaural stereo file from a Dolby Atmos project. I still haven't gotten to, I haven't come up with a full kind of workflow on that. I'll play around with it some over the weekend, see if I get kind of the whole thing figured out, how to do the binaural stereo file. I've seen some people do it, and I'm not sure if it's working as expected, so. All right, so we see from Kevin, says ways to get the hiss out of an MP3 or MP4, a better quality WAV file, which I've been using for a while. I always forget how to do that. So if you want to get hiss out of a recording, WaveLab has some restoration tools that could help with that quite a bit. And I know you have a WaveLab license, Kevin, so if you just open up WaveLab, we'll just come over here. We'll just do. So try going over to WaveLab, and you'll see under Steinberg for your plugins, and you'll see restoration. And check out the restore rig, and this will allow you to do denoising. You have declicking and debuzzing, so all kind of in one particular plugin. So check that out. And those work very well. All right, great to see Best Green Jesus on. All right, so we see from Benny ask, can I set into text silence so it's lowered by, say, 6 dB on a track, Cubase 12 Pro? So let's say, I'll just render these quickly here. So let me just render them. All right, so let's say if we have, all right, so I think if we wanted to just detect the silence here, all right, so we'll get to advanced, detect silence. Okay, so I think maybe if I'm understanding right, let me just read it. Detect silence, so it's lowered by 6 dB on a particular track. So I don't think there's a way of doing it automatically. I'm just seeing if there's to select. You might be able to do it maybe with the gate. So let's say let's see if like a gate plugin would do that maybe. Yeah, I'm just so I assume it's going to be like if you had noise here, like a room tone almost, and you wanted to drop the room tone down. Let's see if I do something, maybe a different approach. Let's say if I'm in the sample editor and we go to hit points. All right, and let's set the threshold like really high, and let's choose to all right, so let's say if we come here to make events, it's gonna set that. I'll play around with it over the weekend to see if I come up with something. So, but let me know if my premise is right. That if you had like room tone here, that you want that to automatically be dropped down by 6 dB instead of it being stripped out. You could just confirm that for me. That'd be great. All right. So you see Uno Memento is kind enough to pass out beer in Michael Teams's absence. So we're missing him today. Hopefully he'll be able to join. All right. So we see question. Help when changing a sample on the sampler track, Cubase stops and I have to click OK to load sample and press play button again. How do I prevent Cubase stopping while browsing a sample on sample track? So let's say if we're here, all right, so let's say I just want to take, okay, so I'll make a sampler track of this. Okay, so let's say if just put in some notes here real quick. All right, so let's say, okay, so let's say I just have kind of a loop playing in the sampler track. So let's say I lock the value. So I don't know if you have like parts that are just playing. But if you have that just continuously playing, so then you could just kind of drag and drop some different samples into Audition. So let me know if you have parts that are playing, if that makes sense. So that way we can just have that event playing while it's continue on. So, but if you wanted to, let's say if I was just playing it manually, so you could also just do that while you're playing. All right. All right, so we see from Chris Hallam says he didn't have about his keyboard shortcuts not being copied over in the profile. So, yeah, so I mean, just try to go back to your Cubase 11 and just save it as a preset. You know, you could always save the preset and copy it over into Cubase 12 as well. All right, so we see I have mix bus going to stereo out, limiter on mix bus set to -1 dB in control room. Sometimes I get true peak showing plus 84, yet limiter showing no limiting being done. All right, so let's take a look. I think I have like just a test tone on here. We just solo this. I'm going to revert my project here. Thank you for all the wonderful questions from everyone. Can't think of a better way to have a 3-year anniversary than to have the live stream today. All right, so let's say we have test tone here. All right, and I'm just going to turn down my control room so you don't have to hear 440 hertz. All right, so it says you have mix bus going to stereo out, set to -1 dB. All right, so I have mix bus. All right, so let's say we're going to evidently mix bus. So I'm going to route this to a group track. So we'll come over here. Okay, and limiter on mix bus is set to -1 dB. So I'm not sure if it's on this. So let's say we put a limiter on. Here, I'll just set this to -1 and let's say we have this cranked up a bit. All right, so in control room, sometimes getting true peak showing plus 84. All right, so I'm not sure if you're just getting the metering here in the control room. So, but also, let's say we do full digital scale. So let's say if we go down to -4, we can see that, you know, depending on your input gain structure, so we say sometimes getting true peak. So that seems to be kind of making sense depending on my input here. So that seems to be kind of correlating as I think. So are you getting plus 84? Is that, or is that a typo maybe? Or is it plus 8.4? And also make sure, see if you have any processing that's going on in your control room as well. So if you come over to your control room area, let me know if you have inserts on any of the processing or the main area as well. All right, so we see question, how can I hide the lines of the grid? How can I hide the lines of the grid? Okay, so depending on like what you have the grid set to, so we could say, okay, there's, you know, we could have our grid set to, let's say, beat. So as we zoom in, we can see that these lines, or if we have it set to quantize, as we kind of zoom in more, let's say our quantized value is set to 16ths. We can see that, or we could have it adapt to zoom. So depending on how far you're zoomed in, the grid resolution increases corresponding to the zoom. Now, if you don't want to see the grid resolution at all, go to your preferences. I think if we go to maybe event display, that there's a grid overlay intensity. So let's say if I switch this to full and we hit OK, and I guess we see that on the events themselves, but so we see kind of the grid in the events, but we might be able to set it somewhere else. It's in the event display, but let's say, right. Let's see if it's in the grid lines. Okay. So if you want like really bright grids, we could change that. So if you go to preferences, to user interface, to color schemes, and you might have to just come to the grid lines. And if we just kind of move that all the way down, we can see that the grid lines are significantly diminished. Or if you wanted them to be really bright, you could just come there. So I'll just set this to defaults. So let me know if that's what you want to do. You see Benny likes my beat. It was a hit, but I just erased it probably. All right. All right. Wonderful to have David M. on. Glad you can make it from Liverpool. So we see from Filter Freak, hi Greg, any idea when the next maintenance update will be released? So I can tell you that it's obviously being worked on. So I can't really share any more information for that because I'm under NDA, but I think we'll be able to see it pretty soon. Sorry, I can't be more specific. See John Barry just asking, says, I use a lot of Groove quantized presets and create my own, but the list is limited. Feature upgrade requests. So yeah, I think you could, like as we come over here, you could choose. So once we're here, we could just save, so if we come here, let's do this, that you could save the preset. But I know sometimes that if we just, you can see it kind of listed here and they all kind of show up. I'll revisit that point as kind of a feature request. I've passed it along personally as well. So yes, you could do it, but it shows up in one long vertical list. See Val Lou says, I did warm up for today's questions by watching some of the older streams. I really want my Halligan 7. So it's a good investment. So if you could do it, but I'd rather the questions be about people on the live stream and stuff as opposed to me. So, but we're glad that you put effort into it. So that's appreciated. All right, so we see Yassi and Trabin. Greg, could you send me the radio show template for me? I'd be happy to use it on my YouTube channel or as an ad. So yeah, send me. You probably sent me an email before, but send me another email and I'll get it sent off to you tonight. So let me see if I still have it. I think I just stored it as a template. Yeah, so I still have it here, so I'd be happy to share it. So yeah, send me just a brain cramp email reminder. All right, so Best Green Jesus says, Friday questions are always fun though. All right. Gareth says Hallian 7 is a one-size-fit-all. All right, so we have Kevin asks a question. I probably asked you this before, Greg, but what are the different kind of WAV files and FLAC files? I know FLAC files are for Macintosh, which I use iTunes and my Dell i7. So FLAC files are just a lossless audio compression. So you have WAV files, and WAV files are kind of full resolution. So you have 16, 24, 32-bit. Resolution, and we could think of that as almost like, how many pictures per second are we. Let me just get this to stop bouncing all time. And then you have FLAC files. So FLAC files, it used to be like when why we had compression was in the old days you couldn't fit a WAV file realistically on one of those 3.5-inch floppy disks. So people would compress the audio files to WAV file, to MP3 or to FLAC. So FLAC is not necessarily Macintosh based. It's basically working on it's platform independent. So doesn't doesn't really have a preference for Mac or PC. But but when you have a compressed file, you could have a lossless compression, which theoretically just reduces the file size without a degradation in the audio quality. And then you could have like MP3 or MP3 files or Windows Media Audio, which is kind of a lossy compression, meaning that you will lose some of the signal. Some of the audio signal quality when using those. So, both platforms can play either one. Generally in Cubase, just work with WAV files. And, I don't think that there is a real need because hard drives are really inexpensive compared to when we're doing audio 30 years ago. And it's like, wow, I have 30 megs and I could almost do a CD for space-wise. So that was the initial impetus for doing a lot of file conversion and compression, but I don't really think there's a need for it, so I wouldn't worry about it within my Cubase workflow. All right. All right, so we see question. Can you go over velocity in a piano part to add dynamics that maybe follow a groove or accent chords and tighten up arpeggio parts? Is there a function for that, or is it only manual? All right, so let's see. Let's see if in this one project if there's MIDI piano that I'm thinking of from Clay Ostwald, who's on earlier. Incredibly, wonderfully talented Clay Ostwald. See if it's still in my recent projects. All right, let me see if this one has. Piano part in it. Might be just a audio piano. Yeah. So let me see if I can find a MIDI piano part here. Okay, I know one we could use. Okay, so let's say so, with piano parts, the velocity could be kind of inherently linked to how the instrument responds to velocity. So a lot of times, what you may want to do is just on particular sections. So let's say if I wanted to take, there's going to be kind of natural dynamics. So let's say maybe the intro, I wanted this intro to be a little louder. So if I just want to take kind of the velocity of that. So let's say, okay, I want to take all these notes here, and I just wanted to bring that up because the piano is a little more prominent. You could adjust kind of the velocity like so and say, okay, when we go into the verse where the vocals come in, maybe I want that to be reduced a little bit. And then as we go into this part, we want to bring up the dynamics a bit. So I could just kind of select. And if you could just grab kind of the upper center area, you could just take proportionally. And also we could just say, I want to do like maybe a crescendo on the velocities of this part. So if you go just to the corner here, you could do kind of crescendos or decrescendos, but still kind of keep the proportionality of the piano. So if you say, okay, I like kind of the natural velocity contours, but I want them overall to do a crescendo to make it work musically with the part, you could do it like that. So a couple of things you could do, sometimes the performance will have, as someone is playing a particular instrument, they'll interact with it musically with the particular velocity values that make sense for it. But sometimes you have people that inputting notes with the mouse and they don't really have the velocity control of like played from a real performance. So let me know if that's helpful for you. See, Benny just says he opened up Cubase 4 today. He's completely confused by what I saw. What a difference to run 12 now. So yeah, it's always interesting sometimes going back. Like once once there was kind of like a big graphics user interface design. I think Steinberg has done a good job of this. Where at first it's like a little like it's a little strange. It'll take a while to get used to it. But once you're in kind of the new programs, I find that when you go back, that you really I always miss the later version. So I think the team has done a really good job of, evolving the user interface over years to make sure it's still compatible with older projects and still not too foreign for other people as well. All right, so we see from Douglas Emerson, thanks, Greg. Happiest anniversary for 3 years. Greatest thanks for helping me over 30 years. So, yeah, I'll be hitting my 31st year in next month with Steinberg. So thank you for the kind words. Okay, so we see, Greg, how to set colors for the fader volume. So I guess it's with the, so we could have like different types of tracks can have different fader cap colors. And those could be set, so like group tracks would be one. But if we wanted to go to like mixed console fader colors. You could set the different types of track fader colors here. So go to your preferences, to user interface, and then go to mixed console fader colors. And then you could change those. But if you wanted to have like the overall channel colored, again, that would be preferences under user interface and go to track and mix console channel colors. And then you could turn that on and off here. So if you want everything to be a bit more like gray and very kind of monotone, some people prefer that. Some people prefer the colors. And if we want it to make the color strength be more, you could do that as well. See, Gareth is happy that I saw, or Lola, Gareth's daughter, is happy that I saw her video. So, and she came in second place. Oh, it's great news. Tell her congratulations for all of us. So you see from Benny, says, Greg, did you download the video? I got a reminder that it hasn't been downloaded. So yeah, I did get it. And I'll share it with you just to make sure I got the right one. But thank you for creating the video. And if anyone else wants to take a little time and just let us know, because Steinberg's actually, after all this time, they're going to actually proactively promote the live streams. So they're going to be doing a marketing campaign. So I thought it'd be great if we had people on the live stream actually say how the live stream has helped them. So Jan was kind enough to send a video this morning. Appreciate that. And for other people who have sent that. But if you just want to do something on your cell phone or like a webcam and just, tell and just share for 10 or 15 seconds how Club Cubase has helped you or something like that, that would be wonderful so we could use that. All right, so we see, what's the best way to use Very Audio like a pro to tune vocals? Thanks. So the best way is always to have a great vocalist that you don't have to tune much, but we always don't have that luxury. So let's say we want to come to Very Audio. So a lot of times, when we're working with Very Audio, we'll just come, activate it. A lot of times what we could do, depending on, how bad the performance is, I like to do like tuning, kind of like vocal, like quantizing. I don't quantize every note, but if something bothers my ear, then I'll quantize it. So, you could go through make every single note perfectly in tune, and that may not be what's great for the vocal. So the first thing I would always do is that there's a number of different smart controls, and there's a default, which is kind of a limited set, and I would always go to show all smart controls. So as we want to kind of zoom in on a particular track, so say if we're here, and let me just unsolo the piano track. All right, so now if we're just going along here, so let's say, okay, and let me just jump back to the beginning. All right, so, things that you could do is, like, if you want to do just like a really quick touch up, is just kind of select multiple notes, and if you go to the bottom, you can choose to kind of, quantize the pitch. So, and a lot of time, just, you don't have to make everything perfect. I think that's kind of a misconception. So many people just automatically try to make everything perfect, and then nothing is unique. Everything that people value about older recordings, whether it's Motown or the Beatles or Led Zeppelin, was a lot of times the actual mistakes and, things like that. So it's perfectly fine. Now, things that you could do to kind of improve is, working on transition. So, if where you see singers that drift off in pitch, so you may want to just come over here and bring up the pitch at a particular point. So while you have this, I'll just zoom in just a little bit. So if we had to take just one little thing, we could say, okay, I just want to take, when we go to our all controls, I could have this little diamond here. So if you have a singer that's like drifting off, you could just, bring up the pitch from that one particular point. So we could just move this diamond. So it's usually defaults in the center, and we could bring up the pitch just by going to this corner right here. Now, sometimes also transitioning between different notes could be tricky. So let's say if I wanted to just, transition between these notes, we could set this little triangle here so that as we work on note transitions, that, we could just have a range that doesn't actually be affected by it. So we could, have those different note transitions. So, just kind of come over here. You don't have to be so heavy-handed unless the vocalist is really bad. But being able just to, know the smart controls and say, maybe, let's see if we could find, sometimes you may see like a note that'll drop off. Something like this. So, where different notes may kind of drop off. Sometimes you may see consonants like at the very beginning here. So we have like a little pickup note, so you may see some consonants. If it doesn't bother you, so a lot of people do pitch correction visually without listening to it. So, being able to kind of come over here and say, okay, at this point, the vibrato is a little too wide on this particular note. So we go to the top center and we could just adjust the vibrato. And where I had that little transition right here, like this little triangle, when we have all the tools and I adjust the vibrato, we could not have the transitions between the notes be affected by the vibrato changes. So I've never had to add vibrato into anyone's vocal tuning, but I've had to take it out a lot. So, but those are some of the things that you could do. And if you have version 12, one of the cool things is you could actually, show the note guide. So if you have a chord track, so you can say, okay, my editor scale is set to G major. And then we could also do snap pitch editing. So if I'm saying, oh, maybe they just hit the wrong note, that I can't move it out of key, that we could just snap it to be directly within the pitch. So those are some things you could do to really help to be like, really slick with Very Audio. Right, let me just find my place. I think my chat field jumped to me. All right, you see Michael Pierce has popped on. Part 1 is done for him. All right. So we see Treetop Mix checking in from Nigeria. All right. So you see Gareth ask, might seem kind of newbie related to what Pablo is asking. When an event is cut into clips, a DOP is applied to or unapplied to Alt-1. So I think it's whatever is selected. So a lot of times, let's say if I cut, just this part out and let's say I've made a copy that when I do a process here, so let's say we'll just go to F7 and let's say, okay, I want to reverse. That will make a new version. So we can see that that is just processing that one particular section because that is what is selected, just that event or just a particular range selection. So if I wanted to just grab my range tool and say, let's do a fade out, we could just do it based only on that one particular event. So it's whatever is selected that will be processed. Okay, you see Kevin Mehmed says, please everyone get Cubase Pro 12 and Hallian 7 and hit the like button. All right. All right, so we have 2R Studios asks, hi Greg, I have Spectral Layers 9 Basic with Cubase 12. With the Pro version from Spectral Layers do something deeper than unmixing vocals? I need to remaster an old song and I don't have the stems, thanks. Yeah, so the Pro version will allow you to take, let me see if I have, yeah. So with Spectral Layers 1, which comes with Cubase 12 Pro, that will allow you to unmix just the vocals, but with the Pro version, you get more control. So let's say if we go to our extensions here, so it'll allow you to unmix like keyboards. It's other, you think of often as guitar, bass, drums, and vocals. So as soon as we go to layers, we can come over here and we'll say unmix stems. And so you have, vocals, piano, drums, bass, and you could also include other, and at that point you could unmix more capabilities with the Pro versions. All right, so we see from Val Lu, question, since I updated Windows yesterday, my media in the right zone don't preview anymore. I did Shift Enter and made sure it's on play. And when I drag them into a project, it works. So make sure that when you're doing this, that you go to Studio, that you're in your audio connections, and make sure that when you go to the control panel, to the control room, that you have the routing for the control room set up here as opposed to in the outputs section. So you probably want the outputs here to be not connected, and you could right click and add a monitor. You could give the monitor a name like I've done here with my Yamaha HS7s. And then at that point, you could be able to monitor all of your different loops directly in, just kind of like that. So try that. So make sure that you have the audio connections for your control room set up, and may have, toggled some things with, during your OS update. All right, and just had a big jump in my chat field. All right, so I may have lost some questions. I apologize for that. All right, but I see Michael Teams is on, so wonderful to see you on. Okay, okay, so we have from Parabot 2 questions. Sorry, I may have lost some questions. It says my Groove Agent SE5, when I go to kits, instrument styles, MIDI, each one just flashes and no lists come up. Is this because I'm on Cubase 12 Artist? All right, so let's come over to, we'll add an instrument track. Let's add a Groove Agent SE. Okay. So let's say we go to, so you go to kits. All right, each one just flashes. Okay, so it seems like, now make sure that you actually, so sometimes people don't necessarily download all the content that comes with this. So you could go to the Steinberg Library Manager. And from the Steinberg Library Manager, you can make sure that you have Groove Agent kits here. I have some extra ones. But you could see kind of the different Groove Agent kits there. So sometimes people don't necessarily download all of the content. So if you go to, let's say, your Steinberg Library Manager, so let's say you choose your Cubase Pro 12, scroll down and make sure that you have all of the Groove Agent content. So you can see the different content here. So make sure that you actually have that downloaded and installed. And you may need, if you updated from a previous version to this, you may need to download the latest version of Groove Agent and the content, but make sure you have all of the content installed directly from there. And if you have it there and you see it in the library manager, come over to your media bay and go to VST Sound. So let me just come over here. Let's get to VST Sound, and then you'll probably see like Groove Agent content, and then make sure that these are checked. And you could also just right click and say rescan disk, and that will go through and rescan the disks and should find all of your content like that. So try those things. Okay, so we see from Joel or Rocket question, how to fix the processing overload that is always peaking no matter what buffer size I'm using while I have tons of computer power available. Thanks, Greg. So, make sure if you have, so check to see if, if you have a lot of plugins, it could be one plugin that's causing it. It also could be something, if you're on PC, it could be like, often like NVIDIA video cards are kind of notorious for this, where you may have to, use just kind of a basic computer set, a basic graphic setting versus like a gaming mode. So, and one way to check to make sure that your system is, if you're on Windows, is good to handle kind of, real-time audio processing, is you can get from resplendence.com a program called Latency Mon, and make sure that your system doesn't have any interruptions that could affect your real-time audio processing. Sometimes people may have one instrument that has 16 different channels loaded into it, or 16 different instruments. Like you may have an instrument that can play multiple sounds but can't use multiple cores. So often there's one plugin can only use one processing core. So some plugins, it's pretty rare, like Halion Sonic SE, the previous version, can use multiple cores, but a lot of times people may say, oh, I'm only running 8 sounds, but it's all, so you may have 12 cores in your computer, but one core is getting totally smashed, and so that could cause all sorts of different system resources. So check out some of those things, but if you're running PC, definitely check out latency mon and make sure your system is, doesn't have any issues that it sees for real-time audio performance. All right. All right, great to see Got Your on. Glad you can make it. Okay. All right, so we see Bruce Simmons ask, can you master in Cubase? So it could really depend on what your definition of mastering is. So many people consider mastering, okay, I want to be able to take an audio file and process it and deliver it, with metadata, and I need to burn it on CDs. I need to have a version for Amazon, for iTunes, for Spotify, for film, for for broadcast, and they could all be different requirements. So and I need to make a DVD so there could be multiple delivery formats for that. So what Cubase isn't as well suited for those particular tasks as Wavelab. If you consider mastering, okay, I want to take my final mix of a project and come over and process it through plugins and treat it kind of as a stereo entity. Cubase can do that, but depending on what your definition of mastering is. So if you wanted to take like your final mix and be able to process it through different plugins and render it out, Cubase could definitely do that. But if you want to do extensive mastering, you could definitely check out Wavelab as well, which is kind of Steinberg's kind of purpose-built mastering solution. All right, wonderful to see Michael Marshall from Somerset, UK. See, Lil Wing Audio just says, does anyone still use or have Windows 7 for Cubase? I have two Dell Optiplexes running Cubase AI8 and Cubase Studio 4. They work fine. So some components won't work. I know when we kind of went to Windows 10 or Cubase 10 or 10.5, I think with 10.5, the new video engine isn't going to work. Or like exporting to video, I think it was in 10.5 or 11. Like that functionality doesn't work on Windows 7, so we don't go through the whole quality assurance test for Windows 7 anymore since it's not being supported by Microsoft. But you may be able to run it fine. You could always try the trial version. Okay, so we have another question. Is it possible to hide expired trial versions from the activation manager? So I don't have any to try, but let me see if we could take a look at it. Okay, so I don't have any trial versions. I could do some research on it if you want to email me. But I don't have any trial versions on here to say for sure, but I could do some research on it. All right, so we see from Ace Amadeus, Greg, does Cubase 12 work okay with the latest PC Windows 10. So yeah, I'm running Windows 10 on my personal system as well. So it runs great, no problems. You see from Couscous about it says when I upgraded Cubase Artist to Pro, the trial version remained in my activation manager and still offers me to buy the version I already have. So I wonder if you go to, let's see if we could come over to, and let's say if we log in, if we could do it remotely. All right, so let's see if we, yeah, I could do some research on it and see if I could maybe find out for sure, but I don't have any trial versions, but I can see where that could be annoying. Sorry about that. All right, we see Michael Teams has made it with ice cream distribution. Thank you for that. All right, so we have a question. Are there any examples on how Logical Editor can be used to make edits on, for example, 100 imported audio files to drastically speed up simple edits on large number of files? It can really depend. Like, do you have let me know like what type of edit that you're doing. So let's say if I, come over here, we make a copy of this, so let's say if we have this broken down, so if we have, lots of files, depending on what is selected, I mean, we could do, different edits, but it could really just determine kind of what type of edits that you want to do. So, if you wanted to come here and do, fades on edits, we could do that for multiple events, or if you wanted to adjust clip gain, we could do that. But if you tell me what type of edits you want to do, you might be able to do stuff in a Project Logical Editor. All right, so we see question. I'm using PreSonus fader port. Do you know how I can use the transport no init to control plugin settings by putting the mouse arrow on the settings and dials it? I don't know how to do that. Thanks. So if you have plugins on, let's say if we go to our MIDI remote here, and I wanted to take this particular MIDI remote here, and I'll go to my mapping assistant. We could go to mouse pointer AI knob. So I just say, let's make this mouse pointer. So I'm just going to double click and we'll assign that. Now, any plugin that I have or anything that I hover over will kind of automatically be adjusted. So if I go to my fader, my pan, let's come over here to EQ. So now anything that I hover over will just automatically be kind of turned on, so we could just, without having to assign any particular function. So go to, again, in the mapping page, once you have this set up in the MIDI remote, and then, so go to mapping page and then you'll see mouse pointer AI knob. and just say value at mouse pointer. Apply that mapping, and then whatever you hover over will turn into like an AI knob. All right, so we have a question. So Halion does not come with Cubase Pro 12. You get Halion Sonic SE as part of the install, and that's been updated to now be Halion Sonic 7. So it's different than the full version of Halion, which will include, additional sound libraries and sampling functions. All right, so we see how would I get a license for Cubase 10? So, right now the Cubase 10 is 4 years old, so it's kind of like walking into a car dealer and saying, I want a 2019 car. When if you are updating from like a Cubase, a Cubase Pro version, it will take your Cubase, it will take your e-licenser key, turn that into a Cubase Pro 11 license. So you'll have, then that gets updated in the Steinberg licensing system. So your Cubase Pro 11 license will work on previous versions like Cubase Pro 10. So. Okay, we have a question from Artist Accelerator. My exported audio is always much louder than my session volume. How do I get my control room volume and main out volume to match what is exported, i.e. session and rendered file sound identical? So, what I would do is, as you're setting it up, really good method for doing this is just to use like a test tone. So come over and say, okay, you want to set the balance. So if you go to inserts and let's go to your tools, you'll have just like a test generator. So here we have it set to like, when we open it up, we'll look at it in our mix console. So we say, okay, this is 440 hertz at minus 12, I think. So minus 12 dB. So we should see that this is minus 12. So you want to make sure that you're not, artificially boosting this and have your control room level down. So try to set like your master fader at 0 dB and then use the control room value for monitoring, because this is the volume that's going to determine the export audio mix down. So at that point, you want to make sure that these are aligned. This is what's critical for the export audio mix down. We could think of this as just being the monitoring volume only. So that's not going to have an effect on the amplitude or volume of the wave file. So I would try just to kind of get that correlate, just do very simply with a test tone. So you know that, okay, minus 12, that's minus 12 there. That's a good starting off point. And I want to make sure that I'm not compensating on my master fader because this level is down. So I would try that. All right, let's go to a couple of quick questions that have been that were mailed in. Thank you for all the great questions. I hope everyone has learned a new tip or trick. And if you learned a new tip or like the live stream, just feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. All right. So let's jump to our first question. All right, so you see, how can I turn on zero crossing point globally and permanently? I've chopped up a performance into about 20 events and need cleaning up. Zero crossing is off by default on all of them. When I move to the next event, I have to turn it on every time, which sometimes I forget and have to backtrack my work. So, when you come here, just make sure that you have the zero crossing on, and I think that will stick. So let's say if I do a new project, that those functions will be global until they're actually changed. So I'm not sure if you're setting up like the zero crossing in the sample editor or the part editor, but once you have this turned on, it's not going to turn off. It will remain exactly the same. And if you're not familiar with what zero crossing is, so a lot of times you may be doing edits and you don't want to, like when you cut a particular audio file. So let's say I have zero crossing on here. I can't actually cut at every single position. So it's only going to allow me to cut at specific intervals where the amplitude is exactly at zero. So this way we don't get kind of a pop or a click when we actually do a cut. Okay, so you just see a question. When I attempt to assign a generic remote key to control sync project and mix console, it doesn't respond. It works with a key command, strangely, at least sometimes. Just wondering if there's any other settings that can impact how this feature behaves. All right, so let's go ahead and let me just add some audio tracks here. Okay, so let's try doing a generic remote for this. Okay, so I'm just going to hit MIDI message. Okay, and let's get the mixer and all right, maybe under command. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. So let's see if I hit my MIDI note message, if it gets turned on. All right, so let me just hide some tracks. Okay, so let's say I want to hide these tracks and we'll turn this on. All right, so let's say, so I just set it up with generic remote and that seems to work. So let's say if we have this off, all right, so now I'm going to hit the, all right. So now I'm going to hide the channels here. So it's just, all right. And let's say when I hide here, so I will, okay, so now this is turned off. So it seems like it's working, but make sure that you're doing it because there's probably several different ways to get this as command, channel and track visibility, and sync visibility of project and mix console. Make sure you're doing it from there, but it seemed to kind of work. All right. So we see question. There doesn't appear to be an available keyboard shortcut for toggling the track version inspector. Is there any way to accomplish this? Strange that it doesn't. The inspect was left out of the shortcuts when the rest are included. So let's come over here quickly. And yeah, I noticed that when we go to our inspector area, that if we have track versions, that there's no dedicated keyboard shortcut for this. So, but I think what you might be able to do, and I think that there is, and this could depend upon the order of it as well, but let's go to the key commands, and let's go to inspector. So there is like the open previous inspector. So I think maybe if we go to all right, so let's say if we go to EQ, let's see if we can make a quick macro for this. And this could vary depending on your order. So let's say I want to go to EQ. And then maybe we could say open previous section. So let's say we have EQ, and let's open the previous section twice. Let's see if this works. So now let's run the macro. So yeah, you could do a macro like that. So take one of the other ones that isn't opening, and then you could just have that automatically open that one, and then just go to open previous or open next, and then you could open up the track version inspector like that. All right. Another question. Is there a way to reorder the track version IDs, use a unique track version for each cue I compose with film and name them sequentially? I have to go back and add one later, i.e. 1M03 after I've already created 1M04, 05, etc. Because that track version has a later track version ID, it appears lower in the list, even though the custom name would typically sort alphanumerically in the appropriate place. It would be great if there was a column and sort option in a track version window, or just the option to delete version IDs or somehow to reorder. All right, so let's add a couple of tracks here. All right, so I'm going to do just a quick recording here. Okay, so I'm going to do a new track version. So I just did the keyboard shortcut for that. Sorry, let me just. Okay, so let me just record here. Okay, and while these are selected, we'll do new track version. Record again. New track version. All right, so let's say if Now let's say on this one, I want to do just a new track version just on this particular file. All right, so once we go to, now I'm going to come and let's go to our project menu to track versions. So I think what you could do here is just simply choose for it to, all right, I'm just going to make sure. So, we could assign common version IDs, or if we wanted to just rename the version. So when we come here, let's say we go to track version 1, okay, and we look at kind of, so, and we look at this, let's say if we go to the project browser, let's get to track versions here, that we could, one is you could now, if you wanted to assign a common version ID for multiple ones. So let's say I want to do this. So we can see our ID indicated right here. So if I wanted this to go to recording 4, so if I change this, we could now just say, okay, I want to deselect and keep the current track versions, or delete, duplicate the track versions like that. And once that's done, we could assign a common ID for it. So now that when we switch, we could just say, okay, I want to go to this version. I go to this version for them all, and then we could change the ID, but I don't think that that we could just change the actual, make it an earlier version number, but you could have different IDs for different takes. Okay, so we see question, importing MIDI track from another session overwrites to track control quick settings when importing to existing track. How to save a track archive from the previous session, and then they import the track archive in order to get the track quick control settings back. It would be great if there was another way. So if you have track quick control settings that you want to preserve, so let's say we go to something like Retrolog. So we go to like our quick controls here, try just to, if you click right here, save it as a preset. So let's say I just want to call this March 17th. Okay, so now when I do a new project, and we load up an instrument track, a Retrolog, that we could just come right over here and just save the track quick controls presets. So, maybe save the quick controls as a preset, and then it's always going to be available for you there. All right, so we have a question. Is there a way to import several projects to one, align each to its track to corresponding track, and mix just one big project? So yeah, if you wanted to do something like that, we could just say, okay, let's do a new project. Okay, so I want to come and say, okay, let's import tracks from project. So I'm going to choose, right, so I'm going to select all the tracks, and I'm going to import them. We can say at the cursor position. Okay, so we can do this. So it's kind of where my cursor position was. Let's say, okay, now I wanted to import other tracks. So let's just come import tracks from other project. we could put these on new tracks if you wanted to. It doesn't matter. So let's just come over. So now we could have kind of, multiple files on different tracks all kind of imported to kind of a master project. You could also just come over, let's say if we didn't like that, we could just say, okay, I want to take, say we'll do new empty project. I say, okay, I want all of these files from this project and just drag them into a different project. And you could drag and drop multiple files. And let's come over here, and I think we had the bicycle project, and we don't even have to have the project open. So it's like, okay, I want these particular files. So we'll just drag and drop, and I want those files to all start right there. So you could even just drag and drop files back and forth. All right, let's see. We're going to jump back to live questions. We'll see if there's any more that have kind of popped in. Thanks to everyone for great questions. Let's see if there's one more question we get to before we wrap up. Yeah. All right, let's see if we can find just a quick question. All right, so Golem Services says he needs Cubase. Well, it's on sale, so 40% off, so take advantage of that. All right, Lucy Godfrey, great to see you on the live stream. Thanks for joining us today. All right, see, there's just a quick. Okay, then we're just about out of time. So, so it's the question: can set up MIDI remote with Novation MIDI launch key? If no, is my best option. MIDI devices legacy under track quick controls. I add address number for level send. So you can set anything that transmits MIDI. You can set up. So that's kind of the beauty of the MIDI remote is once you're here, as long as you don't have to have like a special driver. It will recognize some devices, but you could, create kind of a virtual version of your controller and have it do anything in the MIDI remote. Just as soon as you go to kind of the settings, you can now come over here and just choose just to say, okay, as we're here on a particular remote, we could just choose, I have sliders, knobs, buttons, rotary encoders, push encoders, XY controllers, and we could, create that in software and assign to functions. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up since we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for a lovely 3rd anniversary to the Club Cubase live streams, and we look forward to seeing everyone next Tuesday. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.